This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffmann, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffmann.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffmann. Today is Monday, June the 10th, 2024. We're so glad you could join us here today. Coming up a little later on in the program, I'm going to talk with Maria Zieba. She is Vice President of Government Affairs with the National Pork Producers Council as we talk about the international implications of disease prevention and research and also marketing that we're trying to do around the globe as well. But first, we're going to go ahead and run down those markets.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
Well, we're at the end of another trading day, and we're being joined by Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. And Kenan, I know it was a very mixed start to the day when we got going on the grains, but how did they finish off today on Tuesday?
Yeah, great way to describe how they started and how they finished. Mixed day with corn and soybeans down, and the real strength today was within the wheat market, coming off of its 9-day sessions of losing, just quite a bit higher today.
So what was driving that wheat market higher, and what was pulling those corn and soybeans lower?
First, let's start with corn and soybeans. WASDE reports out tomorrow, as all your viewers most likely know. One thing to think about with that is just kind of the supply and demand side of that corn and soybean market. There's quite a bit of soybean, ending stocks in the US are projected up and ending stocks in the world. Corn is flat, but that 2 billion bushel carry out in the United States is probably weighing heavily on the market. Just kind of keeping it here in that 470 range for new crop. When we look at wheat, I guess one of the stories that possibly led to it being quite a bit higher was, the Russian grain union said more of that wheat was damaged to frost than the ministry from Russia had indicated previously, which could have lent support. Also, there was some good technical support that wheat market hit.
So if you were going to look in your crystal ball of what we could expect out of the WASDE report here coming up tomorrow, what kind of things are you looking to see?
WASDE is always so hard to handicap when you think it's going to be a nothing burger, as my colleague Tyler Shaw likes to say. They throw a wrench in there. I'm not expecting much fireworks. I'm expecting, the analyst guess to be fairly close. We're new into this cropping year, and conditions have been good so far, so I don't see any huge revisions. People will be looking to South American revisions and maybe some of those wheat revisions on the world stage to see if there's any change, but I don't see there's any big hiccups from my guess, but they like to throw those, wrenches in there.
All right. Well, sure enough, they do, and we'll be looking for that tomorrow. Now, moving over to the livestock side of things, let's start in cattle. What kind of day did we have there?
Yeah, cattle were down on the day. Hash is strong, so we'll see where the feeder index comes in on feeder cattle today. It may be the highest point since and break the highs from last September, which will be interesting to see. Cattle market has been hanging in there, even with all the bird flu stories that have come in. It's down today. It was up really strong yesterday, but cash has been strong and leading the way in that market.
And on hogs, I know they've had a little bit of a rough time. Well, actually, that's an understatement. What did we see out of there today?
Yeah, another down day in hogs. They still can't seem to find support. Hopefully, they've had a few days, at least in the front month here, that they've been trading around the same area. They're oversold. Maybe look for some support in that market soon, hopefully, and maybe some more demand to come in.
All right. Well, lots for us to consider here with the way everything's shaping out. If folks want to pick the minds of everybody at agmarket.net, maybe get some ideas of what they should be doing, whether it's marketing what they have or planning for the 2024 harvest and getting those bookings wrapped up, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, eggmarket.net on the World Wide Web is the best place to find us. You can sign up for some information, look for a broker in your area, and get a hold of us and pick our brains.
All right. Well, Kenan, we thanks so much for the insight. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you.
That again was Kenan Layden of agmarket.net. Let's go ahead and take a look at the closing numbers coming to you on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network market screen.
July corn was down 2 1/4 at 449.5. Soybeans down 10 1/4 at 11.78 even. Soybean meal down $8.70 at 359.30. Soy oil up a penny at 43.67. Chicago wheat up 19 cents at 626.5. Kansas wheat up 11 1/4 at 655 even. Minneapolis spring wheat up 3 1/2 at 678 3/4. Oats up a half point at 334 even. On the Merc Live, cattle down 17 cents at 183.75. Feeders down $1 at 257.65. Lean hogs down 62 cents at 92.27. Pork cutouts down 72 cents at 103.45. Class 3 milk up 8 cents at 19.78.
And that's been a check of our market recap. We're going to take a short break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, we talk with Maria Zieba of the National Pork Producers Council. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Hoffmann. Well, when we talk about international relations with trade and with other endeavors in the livestock industry, there's a lot of many facets that we have to talk about. Whether that's disease prevention and working with other countries to find solutions and also to prevent it from spreading any further, to trade and opening up new markets and also seeing where we can improve markets all around the globe. Maria Zieba is Vice President of Government Affairs with the National Pork Producers Council, and she gives us an international look at the American pork industry.
We're at World Pork Expo 2024 here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, talking with Maria Zieba, VP of Government Affairs with the National Pork Producers Council. Thanks so much for talking with us here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I know we were talking just before we went on a lot of international things that you keep your finger on the pulse of. First of all, we did talk with about animal health here just a little bit ago, but kind of give us an idea of what's being done from your aspect with dealing with foreign animal diseases, whether that is African swine fever, whether it's foot and mouth, whatever it is. What kind of things do you do to kind of keep on top of it?
Yeah, so a lot of my role is to not only make sure that on an international front that we have this regulatory cohesion, whether it's pre-harvest in the WOA, World Organization of Animal Health, or post-harvest in Codex, but beyond that, that countries live up to those commitments and standards. I think one part that's very important for us is to make sure that our trading partners to the north and the south of us are doing as much as we are to prevent the influence or the incursion of a foreign animal disease outbreak. And so we work really closely with both our counterparts in Canada and Mexico on those issues, because we certainly don't want a foreign animal disease outbreak like African swine fever to hit our shores. And that's where we've spent quite a bit of time working in partnership, not only with the producer organizations, but also with those governments.
And maybe give us an understanding of what it takes to work with them. I mean, because you're talking about separate governments, different ways of doing business. How is it to work with our partners there to kind of have that cohesive unit?
Yeah, so it takes a lot of meetings, a lot of time commitment. We certainly are, a couple of years ago, Secretary Vilsack took $500 million from the CCC, and it was the first time ever that he had put $500 million or any funding into, USDA had put any funding into something that was for preparedness and prevention. Usually we're dealing with something after we get it. And this was the first time that had happened. And so what that allowed us to do as an industry was work collaboratively with our partners at USDA to increase surveillance in the United States, but within the regions. It also meant that we re-upped our laboratory in Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico is able to test for various foreign animal diseases, but that also meant that we were spending a lot of time, the U.S. government was spending a lot of time in Haiti and the Dominican Republic, which do have African swine fever, and working on with Canada and Mexico to make sure that we don't get it from that island from Hispaniola. So it's been a lot of work, a lot of meetings. But with deliverables like the laboratory where we can test samples from and make sure that we don't get it in the United States, and also the canines that we see, and the lovely little beagles as well. So that's part of what we've been working on.
Okay. Other international aspects, I know disease prevention obviously a high thing, but what other things are you kind of keeping an eye on in your role?
Yeah, I think that it's been really interesting to see the international community come together on these issues. We just had the 100-year anniversary of WOA, which is the World Organization on Animal Health. That was last week. MPPC had representation there. We're looking at various standards and how, as an international community, we can work together to prevent some of these issues. We're also very active in the food and agricultural space, FAO in Rome, as well as in the post-harvest area. But I think that for us, in my role, in my position, my number one priority is to make sure that we have continuity and that we are able to export to as many markets as possible, but to have the same rules and standards applied universally. And that's where MPPC and our team has been able to work on, not only at the WTO level, but WOA, OIE, IMS, and those are, I throw those acronyms, those are organizations that we are part of that have a huge role in setting international standards. And if MPPC isn't at the table, then we're going to get standards applied to us that we may not like. And so it's very important to be very vigilant and to be on top of all of that.
And how hard is it to get compliance so everybody else is in check while still making sure we're protected and growing those marketplaces, because not everybody has the access to the same resources that we have here in the United States?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. That's part of we've been investing. The U.S. government has a lot of capacity building and development programs in the world. We're also part of various organizations that help countries, like for example in Africa, live up to those commitments, but also these countries be part of the conversation, because budgets are tight not only in the United States but everywhere in the world, so sometimes the U.S. or the EU has to pick up the slack on some of these.
And what's the challenge maybe in that situation? Is there any challenge with getting some countries into compliance? Is there any challenge with the willingness to be part of these these efforts?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is it's tough to have regulatory cohesion throughout the world, especially when you have very different production standards and practices in the world. So that's why standards take decades to be created, and that's some of the issue globally that we've faced. But it takes a while to set things up, but we're on a good course so far.
And you mentioned, obviously making sure there's that cohesion with getting the markets out there and getting those exports going. Are we seeing anything that's really that's surprising, or something that you're really proud of seeing right now in that market development area where things are kind of just growing at a good spot?
So the administration has been focused a lot on this regulatory cohesion, and they've been negotiating 3 different frameworks. The Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, the U.S.-Taiwan Framework, U.S.-Taiwan 21st Century Framework. Okay. It's a mouthful. And then another agreement with U.S. and Kenya. Within those, they're not looking at addressing tariff barriers. That is something that we keep pushing them for. But what they are looking at is setting those sanitary and phytosanitary standards and regulatory cohesion in those regions. And my job has been to look at that negotiating text and sit down with our negotiators and say, okay, this is what's going to work for our industry, and this is what is not going to work for us. We've been able to have very fruitful conversations. But I think that there's a little bit of a misperception that nothing is happening on trade. There's a lot happening on trade. It's just happening behind the scenes, and there's not press releases, and we don't see a lot of these things because we're doing a lot of that grunt work right now. So It's been quite busy to not only in that space, but also making sure that we continue to have market access in countries that we have free trade agreements and that new barriers aren't being put up by our trading partners.
And you mentioned those tariff barriers that you're trying to work hard on in those agreements to try to get them knocked down. I mean, how important is it to get it done, but how do we strike that balance between helping our industry but also making sure we protect some of the other industries in this country?
Yeah, so for our industry, it's been, we need to have certainty in various marketplaces. We can't have one standard for one country and another standard for another country. This is why being involved in international organizations is so important, but also as the administration looks at negotiating in Kenya or Taiwan or Indo-Pacific, if they don't get it right now, sets a precedent for us that we're going to have to try to unravel later on. And once you have negotiating text, it makes it very difficult and it goes into effect. It makes it almost impossible to go back to a previous system. So that's why we have to be so vigilant to making sure that what the U.S. government is negotiating is what makes the most sense for our producers, and that we don't have various standards for domestic production versus international production.
All right. Well, that's mostly what I had to cover, but is there anything else that we didn't talk about today that the Iowa producers maybe need to know about?
I would love to, we have the African Growth Opportunities Act. That is an agreement that Congress needs to act upon. It comes up for renewal every 10 years. If countries are eligible within the African continent, then they can get preferential benefits and preferential market access into the United States through AGOA, the African Growth Opportunities Act. 10 years ago, the U.S. Had negotiated market access for U.S. pork. We have not seen the fruits of that labor yet, and so we've been pushing a lot to get market access for U.S. pork within AGOA, to see that not only that the agreement has stronger enforcement mechanisms, but that it is used as a leveraging tool to make sure that our producers are taken care of, because as part of the agreement, you have to provide equitable access, and so that's something that our producers were active on Capitol Hill earlier this year, and we just had a letter sent from members of Congress to the administration to look out for our producers when it comes to U.S. pork in Africa and in South Africa in particular.
All right, well, Maria, we thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us. As Maria Zieba with National Pork Producers Council here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Thank you.
And that again was Maria Zieba of the National Pork Producers Council. And that brings us to the end of today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, and on our YouTube channel. And you can subscribe and hit the bell icon there, and you can be notified each time we put out a new video project. Also, don't forget about our free 3 times daily market analysis sent right to your mobile device through Amazon, Apple, Spotify, Google, and Podbean. From the IRN studios in Des Moines, I'm Dustin Hoffmann. For Quentin Slater, Mark Magnuson, Riley Smith, and Andy Peterson, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.